The drop pods cut through the darkness like silent meteors, their heat shielding absorbing the friction of Nova Prime's atmosphere. Inside, Commander Jace Mitchell counted the seconds, his fingers wrapped tight around the harness straps. Across from him, Chief Petty Officer Sam Carter smirked. $10 says they don't even realize we landed, Carter muttered. Jace didn't look up. You know I don't take sucker bets. The SEAL team, a 12-man unit sent to fight an army, had spent the last week studying every detail of the Rither Legion's encampment. Satellite intel showed overconfidence in every detail, no motion sensors, minimal aerial patrols, and a command structure built around brute force rather than strategy. The enemy had numbers. The SEALs had skill. A sharp beep sounded in their earpieces. 5 seconds to impact. Jace exhaled slowly. See you on the ground. The pod's retrothrusters fired, turning a high-speed fall into a featherlight landing. The moment the hatch hissed open, Jace was moving, boots silent against the soft, alien soil. Around him, the rest of Bravo Team fanned out, weapons raised, eyes scanning. The Rither Legion's encampment sprawled less than a mile away, its towering structures glowing under the twin moons. With a quick hand signal, the team activated adaptive camo, their suits bending light to render them nearly invisible. They moved like ghosts, advancing toward the enemy's stronghold without a sound. The Rither Legion, numbering over 10,000, had grown complacent. They had conquered countless worlds without resistance. To them, humanity was just another name on a long list of conquests. Jace was about to educate them. Through his visor, he marked the key targets: fuel depots, ammo stockpiles, power relays. Hit those first, and the enemy would be blind, deaf, and crippled before they even realized the fight had started. Carter and Petty Officer Reese split off toward the fuel reserves. Lieutenant Park and his team moved toward the command center's communications array. Jace and 2 others set their sights on the artillery platforms, massive plasma cannons that could level a city. The sentry patrols were a joke: tall, lumbering Rither warriors, their 4 muscular arms gripping ceremonial spears more than functional weapons. They weren't expecting resistance, and it showed. Jace watched as Carter crept up behind a sentry, blade flashing in the moonlight. One clean stroke across the throat, and the alien collapsed, its gurgling death masked by the night wind. One by one, the SEALs moved through the camp, silent as death. Jace reached the artillery cannons and quickly placed a series of shaped charges on their power cores. With a flick of his wrist, he activated a silent countdown: 3 minutes. A soft crackle sounded in his earpiece. Park's voice. "Comms are down. They're cut off," Carter chimed in. "Fuel's rigged to blow. Light show in 60 seconds. Jace smiled grimly. "All right, boys. Let's wake them up." A thunderous explosion ripped through the night as the fuel depot erupted into a fireball, sending flaming debris skyward. A split second later, the artillery platforms detonated, sending shockwaves through the ground. Panic spread through the Rither camp like wildfire. Their orderly ranks dissolved into chaos, warriors shouting in their guttural language, scrambling for weapons. Then the power grid failed. Every towering floodlight flickered out, plunging the entire encampment into darkness. Jace crouched behind a supply crate, watching the confusion unfold through his night vision visor. The Rither, reliant on superior firepower and numbers, had never been trained for a fight like this. Carter's voice in his ear. "They don't even know where to shoot." Jace smirked. "Let's keep it that way." The SEALs struck fast, vanishing before the enemy could react. They fired only when necessary, silenced weapons, quick bursts. Every shot counted. Every kill left the Rither more rattled. One squad of Rither warriors finally managed to regroup, their commander barking orders. Jace watched as Reese lobbed a smoke grenade straight into their midst. A beat of silence. Then, from the smoke, came the rapid pop-pop-pop of suppressed gunfire. The Rither dropped without even seeing their attackers. By the time the first Rither reinforcements arrived, they weren't entering a battlefield. They were stepping into a nightmare. Dead bodies, arranged in unnatural positions, their weapons missing, vanished. Half-written distress messages on cracked data slates, cut off mid-sentence. Enemy corpses propped up like they were still standing, their lifeless eyes staring into the darkness. Fear seeped into the Rither ranks. These warriors had been trained to fight armies, not shadows. They fired wildly into the night, their shots hitting nothing. Jace watched from above, perched on a half-destroyed watchtower. He could hear them muttering in their alien tongue, their voices tinged with uncertainty. He didn't need a translator to understand what they were saying. "What are we fighting?" A burst of static in his ear. Park again. "Boss, we've got movement at the command tent. Some high-rank bastard trying to restore order." Jace's eyes flickered to the tent in question. He could see the massive figure of a Rither commander, gesturing wildly, roaring orders. Jace pulled a small drone from his belt, tapped a few commands. The tiny device whirred to life, zipping toward the tent unnoticed. Inside, the commander's voice boomed through the speakers. "It's only a few of them. Find them. Kill them." Jace patched the drone's signal into the enemy comms, then overlaid his own voice. "Calm. Cold. Deadly. You brought an army." A beat of silence. The Rither commander stiffened. "We brought 12. Jace tapped his wrist pad. Outside, the last batch of explosives detonated, sending a final wave of destruction through the enemy camp. Then the seals disappeared into the night. The chaos in the Rither encampment hadn't settled, it had only gotten worse. The fire from the detonated fuel depot still burned, casting flickering shadows across the battlefield. Bodies of Rither warriors lay strewn about, some still clutching weapons they never got the chance to fire. Jace Mitchell crouched low in the underbrush, his visor displaying heat signatures of confused Rither soldiers stumbling through the wreckage. Their rigid formations were gone. Some fired aimlessly into the darkness. Others barked orders, trying to restore order. They were afraid. Jace spoke softly into his calm. "Carter, talk to me." A quiet chuckle. "They're scrambling, boss. Running in circles. Got a patrol heading west, looks lost. Permission to introduce myself?" Jace smirked. "Make it quick. We've got work to do." A muffled grunt came through the channel. Carter was already on it. The Rither commander, a towering brute in black armor, was doing his best to regroup his forces. From the cover of a broken supply station, Jace watched him wave his 4 arms, shouting into a comm device. The man was desperate. "Good." Jace switched channels. "Park, can you patch into their comms again?" "Already on it," Park whispered back. "What's the message?" Jace grinned. "Make them paranoid." A moment later, static crackled through the enemy's radios. Then, Jace's voice, cold and deliberate. "You are compromised. Your men are dying. You just don't know it yet." The Rither soldiers around the commander froze, looking at each other, their alien faces twisting in uncertainty. Some clutched their weapons tighter. Others scanned the darkness, seeing threats where there were none. Then Carter struck. From a rooftop, a single silenced shot took down a Rither captain, a clean headshot. The alien crumpled mid-step, his body hitting the dirt without a sound. The nearest Rither soldier panicked and opened fire. His plasma rifle spat glowing blue rounds into the darkness. His comrades, startled, did the same. Jace and his men didn't need to fight them anymore. They were shooting at ghosts. A squad of Rither soldiers had finally broken away from the confusion, forming up in a tight wedge. Their commander, a grizzled officer with deep scars across his chitinous face, took charge. Jace let them believe they had control. From his position in the wreckage, he tracked the squad's movements. 10 Rither. He had 3 men. The aliens advanced in a tight formation, rifles sweeping from left to right. They moved toward a half-collapsed structure, a perfect choke point. Jace tapped his wrist pad. A silent command flashed across the SEALs' HUDs. Ruiz, hidden in the shadows above, dropped a small motion-triggered mine onto the rubble pile. The device barely made a sound as it nestled into place. The Rither took another step. The mine detonated, a compact but devastating concussive blast that sent the entire squad sprawling. Jace didn't give them a chance to recover. He and his men moved fast, emerging from cover with deadly precision. Suppressed gunfire cut down 3 Rither before they even got to their feet. One soldier tried to raise his rifle. Jace's knife was faster. He drove the blade up beneath the alien's chin, twisting hard before shoving the body aside. Carter took down another with a burst to the chest, while Ruiz fired a grenade into the wreckage, burying the last survivors under rubble. 10 Rither. Gone in under 10 seconds. Jace clicked his comm. Squad neutralized. Moving to secondary position. The Rither ranks were crumbling, but their commander wasn't done. A fresh wave of reinforcements arrived from the eastern perimeter, dozens of soldiers marching in unison, plasma rifles at the ready. Jace narrowed his eyes. The enemy was adapting. Too slow, but still adapting. He switched comms. Carter, we need them to move west. Make them think we're regrouping there. Roger that. Moments later, a series of distant gunshots rang out from the far side of the camp. Explosions followed, small, controlled blasts, just enough to suggest an enemy presence. The Rither commander fell for it. He barked an order, sending half his forces to chase shadows. Jace turned to Park. Drop the drones. 3 recon drones zipped through the battlefield, each carrying a handful of micro-explosives. They hovered over clusters of distracted Rither soldiers before detonating in rapid succession. Fire and debris ripped through their ranks. Confusion turned into terror. By now, the Rither had completely lost their nerve. Some broke formation, retreating into the jungle. Others fired at nothing, their fear getting the best of them. Jace's team left bodies in strategic locations, half covered in shadows, positioned in unnatural ways. The message was clear. You are not safe. As Jace watched, a younger Rither soldier, probably a fresh recruit, dropped his weapon and ran. The commander grabbed him, shouting orders. But others started looking uneasy. Fear was poison. Once it spread, it was unstoppable. Then came the final touch. Park activated the SEAL's signal jammer, causing the Rither comms to scramble with distorted voices. Jace's voice cut through the static, modulated, low, and deadly. You were never in control. Silence. Then, the first Rither defected. A squad of 5 warriors turned and fled, disappearing into the jungle. The commander roared in fury, but it was over. His men had lost faith. Jace smirked. We're done here. Time to disappear. With that, the SEALs melted into the darkness. They had fought an army. And the army lost. The jungle was alive with movement. Branches snapped, leaves rustled, and the air hummed with tension. The Rither Legion wasn't finished, not yet. Commander Jace Mitchell and his SEAL team had crippled their enemy, but the Rither weren't just some backwater war band. They were a conquering force. And like any cornered predator, they had finally adapted. From his position atop a rocky outcrop, Jace scanned the battlefield through his visor. What remained of the Rither forces had regrouped, not in scattered, panicked clumps, but as a tight, disciplined phalanx. They're learning, Carter muttered beside him. His rifle rested against his shoulder, tracking the enemy's movements. Jace watched as the Rither formed a perimeter, their weapons no longer firing blindly into the darkness. They moved efficiently, covering each other's flanks, sweeping for ambushes. The Legion commander still lived. That much was clear. Jace keyed his mic. Park, you seeing this? A slight pause. Yeah. They've shifted tactics. No more panic. Looks like they've identified priority targets, us. Jace exhaled through his nose. They're adapting faster than expected. We stay one step ahead. Ruiz's voice crackled in. Boss, bad news. They've deployed aerial scouts, small drones, fast-moving. If they sweep the area, they'll pin us. Jace's jaw tightened. The Rither were done playing defense. The jungle wasn't safe anymore. If they stayed, the Rither would flush them out with drones and fire teams. Jace made a decision. We move. West toward the ridge. The team slipped through the undergrowth, careful, methodical. The adaptive camo helped, but it wasn't perfect. If a drone got close enough, it would pick up heat signatures. A faint whirring sound echoed through the trees. The first drone had arrived. Jace froze, motioning for the team to take cover. The small black machine hovered 30 feet overhead, scanning. Its sensor array glowed faintly blue, sweeping the terrain in slow arcs. Ruiz aimed his suppressed rifle. Jace held up a hand. Wait! Shooting it down would expose them. But if they let it pass... The drone paused, its scanning beam flickering over their last position. Then it moved on. Jace didn't exhale until it disappeared beyond the tree line. Go! Now! They moved fast, crossing the jungle in near silence. Behind them, the enemy was tightening its grip. 15 minutes later, the team reached the ridge overlooking the enemy camp. From here, they could see the Rithers' movements in real time. Park's voice came through the comms. They're sweeping in sectors. Their commanders leading from the front. Risky. Jace narrowed his eyes. The commander was done hiding. He had stepped onto the battlefield, moving with his troops, directing an aggressive search pattern. Carter knelt beside Jace, studying the enemy through his scope. If we take him out now, their whole operation collapses. Jace shook his head. Not yet. They're expecting an ambush. If we strike too soon, they'll be ready. He watched as a squad of Rither set up gun emplacements along the eastern perimeter. They were digging in, preparing for a siege. They thought the SEALs would stay defensive. Jace had a better idea. They weren't going to run. They were going to strike. Jace switched comms. Ruiz, Carter, plant charges along their eastern perimeter. Make it look like we're setting up defenses. A chuckle from Carter. You're gonna make them think we're cornered. Jace nodded. Exactly. As the team worked, the Rither scouts pushed forward, searching the jungle with increasing precision. They found false trails, boot prints leading the wrong way, expended shell casings near areas the SEALs had never fired from. Every clue pointed toward a last stand. The Rither took the bait. Within the hour, their commander issued the order. Crush them. The Legion began advancing toward the false position, a heavily wooded section where the SEALs had never been. Jace's team watched from the ridge, hidden, waiting. Then, he clicked the detonator. A wave of explosions ripped through the advancing Rither lines. Trees splintered, bodies hurled through the air, their formations broken in an instant. The Rither panicked, just for a moment. But their commander was still standing. And he was angry. The Rither leader, a towering brute with scarred black armor, stepped forward. Jace knew his type. A warrior who had fought and won too many battles to believe in defeat. Jace switched to open comms, broadcasting directly into the Rither's frequencies. You were warned. The commander's mandibles flared, his voice a low growl. Cowards! You hide in shadows, but you cannot run forever. Jace smirked. Who said anything about running? Then, he and his SEALs opened fire. The first wave of Rither soldiers dropped before they could react, precision shots tearing through their ranks. The ones who survived charged. Jace moved like a ghost, weaving through the chaos, switching between rifle and blade. He caught one Rither mid-swing, dodged under its strike, and drove his knife into its throat. Carter fought beside him, dropping enemies with rapid headshots, his movements cold and efficient. Ruiz took out their support gunners, cutting off the Rither's ability to counterattack. The commander roared, drawing a massive blade. He locked eyes with Jace. Enough games! The Rither lunged. Jace sidestepped the first strike, the blade slicing the air where his head had been. He ducked under the second swing, rolling to the side as the commander brought his weapon down like an executioner. Then Jace struck. He fired point blank into the Rither's knee, making the alien stumble. Before it could recover, Jace surged forward, knife flashing. One clean strike through the commander's second heart. The Rither staggered, eyes wide in shock. His body twitched, then collapsed. Silence. The remaining Rither froze. Their leader was dead. The fight was over. Jace flicked the blood from his knife. Your war is lost. One by one, the surviving Rither dropped their weapons. The SEALs had done the impossible. But the mission wasn't over yet. Jace keyed his comms. Park, get me a secure line. HQ needs to hear this. Because if the Rither had been willing to send 10,000 troops for one planet, then the real war was only beginning. The battlefield was silent. Smoke drifted through the ruins of the Rither encampment, flickering in the moonlight. The last echoes of gunfire had faded, leaving only the occasional crackle of burning wreckage. Jace Mitchell stood over the fallen Rither commander, his blade still slick with alien blood. The SEALs had done it. The enemy's leadership was broken, their forces shattered. But something felt wrong. His earpiece crackled. Boss, you're gonna want to hear this. Park's voice came through, tense. Jace stepped away from the body, his instincts prickling. Go. Intercepted a transmission before their comms went down. The Rither weren't just here for conquest. This was a test. Jace's gut tightened. Test for what? A pause. Then Park's voice, lower now. For the real invasion. Jace's gaze swept across the battlefield. The Rither hadn't fought like a desperate, dying army. They had fought like expendable assets. He switched comms. Ruiz, Carter. We're pulling intel. Find me their command terminal. On it, Ruiz answered. Jace looked at the surviving Rither warriors. Their weapons were on the ground, their posture defeated, but their eyes held no fear. They weren't prisoners. They were survivors of a force that had already accepted its fate. He turned to one of them, a soldier with deep blue markings on his armor, an officer, most likely. Jace crouched, keeping his voice measured. You lost. The Rither tilted its head, mandibles twitching. Then it did something unexpected. It smiled. Jace's fingers tightened around his weapon. What's funny? The Rither's voice was a low growl. You think this was victory? Jace didn't blink. Looks like it from where I'm standing. The alien's gaze flicked to the sky, then back to Jace. You killed our commander. Destroyed our forces. But you are still here. Something cold settled in Jace's chest. Ruiz's voice cut in. Boss, we got a problem. Jace rose. Talk. Ruiz's breathing was sharp. Found their command console. Pulled their last orders. This wasn't just an assault force. A beat of silence. Then Ruiz spoke again. They were stalling. Jace looked up. At first, there was nothing. Just the vast expanse of space, stars twinkling. Then, the stars moved. Dozens, no, hundreds of ships, broke through the upper atmosphere. A full Rither invasion fleet. Jace's heart pounded. All teams, exfil now! We are compromised. The SEALs moved fast, but the first wave of bombardments hit before they could even reach the jungle. Fire rained from above. Massive plasma strikes tore through the treetops, turning lush green into blazing infernos. The ground quaked with each impact, shockwaves knocking Jace off his feet. Carter helped him up, eyes wild. They weren't trying to win the ground battle. They were just keeping us occupied. Jace gritted his teeth. We need to move. Now. Park's voice came through the comms. Boss, I'm running comm interference, but we need an exit strategy. Their fleet's jamming long-range transmissions. Jace's mind raced. No reinforcements. No air support. Just them against an entire invasion force. Then he saw it. In the distance, through the burning jungle, a captured Rither transport sat half intact, its sleek design built for atmospheric and orbital maneuvers. Jace pointed. That ship. We take it, we get off-world. Ruiz exhaled. Gonna be a hell of a sprint. Jace smirked. You scared? Carter loaded a fresh mag. Let's move. The team raced through the inferno, dodging falling debris and enemy patrols. The Rither hadn't expected them to make a run for it yet, still focused on securing the battlefield. That gave the SEALs a narrow window. The first checkpoint came into view, a squad of Rither setting up a forward command post. Jace didn't slow down. With practiced efficiency, he fired 2 quick bursts, dropping the first pair of guards before they could react. Carter and Ruiz took out the rest before their comms even registered an alert. 30 meters to the transport. A deep, guttural roar echoed from their flank. Heavy footfalls. Jace turned in time to see a Rither juggernaut, an armored brute twice his size, charging toward them with an energy hammer the size of a truck engine. No time to dodge. Jace fired point blank. The bullets pinged off its armor, barely slowing it down. Then, Ruiz dropped a thermite grenade at its feet. The blast engulfed the juggernaut's lower half in molten fire. It roared, stumbling, and in that moment Jace moved. One shot to its exposed throat. The beast collapsed. 10 meters to the transport. Carter sprinted ahead, slamming his fist against the ship's control panel. Come on, come on! The hatch hissed open. They piled in, sealing the door behind them. Jace stormed to the cockpit, flicking through the alien controls. Park, get me flight systems. Already on it, hold tight. Outside, the first wave of enemy ground forces spotted the transport. Plasma fire raked across the hull. Engines powered up. Jace gripped the controls. Strap in. The ship lurched upward, engines roaring as it shot through the flames below. Enemy fighters banked in pursuit, plasma cannons lighting up the sky. Jace weaved through the firestorm, instinct taking over. A lock warning blared. Missile inbound. Park's voice came through. Deploying countermeasures, now! Flashes of heat and metal burst from the ship's hull, intercepting the missile just before impact. Jace gritted his teeth, pushing the engines to their limit. The atmosphere thinned, the blackness of space closing in. Then, one final explosion. The seals broke through. Silence. Jace exhaled, his grip loosening on the controls. They had escaped. But as he looked ahead, his stomach tightened. The Rither fleet hung above Earth, dark and waiting. This battle was over. But the war had just begun.